Welcome to the Infuse Compassion podcast, hosted by me, Amy Quisenberry.
And me, Mark Carpenter.
We are on a mission to make this world a kinder place for us all by bringing healthier human connection to communities, families, and organizations of all types and sizes.
Our goal is to create stronger relationships, more inspired teams, increased trust, and improved results.
So let's get started with more ways to infuse compassion into our world. Welcome back, Compassionators, to the Infuse Compassion podcast. Boy, have we have somebody so special. I'm so excited that he's here with us today. The work that he has done over the past 2 decades, so powerful, so transformational. I'm going to turn it over to my good buddy, Mark, to do the introductions.
Awesome. Thank you. And we have this beautiful bio on our guest today that we'll put into the show notes, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to give a little more personal introduction. Chester Elton is actually just one of my favorite thought leaders of all time. More importantly, he's just a good person. And I know his mission is just, the way I describe it is he's on a mission to help us be the better version of ourselves. I love his work because he provides real solutions to leaders who want to build exceptional teams and great workplaces. He has consulted with a wide variety of businesses across a wide variety of industries, has all sorts of accolades to his name. My favorite one was the one that Canada's Globe and Mail gave to Chester. They call him the Apostle of Appreciation. I love that title. It fits him so well. He's the co-author of multiple books, including, for those of you that can see us on the video, I've got these books, All In, The Carrot Principle, which I've got digitally, Leading with Gratitude, The Best Team Wins. I've got Leading with Gratitude in the wrong order, and Anxiety at Work. Now, his co-author, Adrian Gostick, is also a friend of mine. And together they have created the Culture Works podcast, which I would encourage you to follow as well. Because he and Adrian are the founder of a company called The Culture Works. Chester also serves on the advisory board of a fantastic organization called One Kind Act a Day, whose mission is to make kindness a daily habit. But he's most proud to be the father of 4 exceptional children, a devoted grandfather to 4 grandchildren, and the husband to his amazing wife, Heidi, with whom he just celebrated his 42nd wedding anniversary. So Chester Elton, welcome to the Infuse Compassion podcast.
Thank you, Mark and Amy. Delighted to be with you. And, as the Apostle of Appreciation, I think there's only one thing to say after an introduction like that, and is, can I get an amen?
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Woo!
Chester, I want to start our conversation with a broad question.
Sure.
Just because with that background that I just gave briefly to our compassionators, who we call our listeners, our compassionators. You've worked with all these organizations over the years to try to get better work environments. What is one tip from all those years of experience that you would give leaders that would have the most profound difference on creating strong teams and a winning culture?
It's such a great question, and there are so many answers you can give to that. Lately, where I've really been focusing on is, do you know your people's story? Because everything changes when you know the story, and I love that. Where did you come from? How did you get here? What do you want to accomplish while you're here? Within that, there are so many good questions you can ask, like, what would be your ideal position? What really excites you about your job? But where you come from, like, did you come from Asia? Did you come from Europe? Did you come from South America? Did you come from Texas? All countries that are very quirky, especially Texas. And once you get that background, how they grew up, I'll give you a perfect example. I was working with this young Asian guy, great guy and everything, and I really liked him. And I said, "Hey, tell me a little bit about your family and your background." He said, "Well, my parents had me when they were kind of older, so it was kind of a surprise at the end." I said, "Well, where do your parents come from?" He goes, "Vietnam." He said, "They were boat people." And now, if you know a little bit about Vietnam and the Vietnam War, as everything collapsed, there were people that literally jumped in little dinghies and just rowed out into the middle of the ocean, hoping that the American sailors would find them. And they did. They found his parents and they came to America and they're working really hard. And it's all about education and hard work and family. Well, everything changed about him when I found that out. And then all those little things along the way made sense. That he was sending money home to his family, that he always connected with his mom and dad, that education was first and foremost in everything he did. So knowing that story made all the difference. So I would start with the human side. If you want to build a great team, make sure you know your team's story and build from there.
I love that. Love that as a background. Amy, let's have you jump in here.
I'm so curious. How did you come upon this work? Like, there was a moment in your life where I'm sure you said, I'm not okay with how things are, and I think I can make a difference. I would love to hear that.
Well, another great question. And basically, what you're doing, right, is you're saying, what's your story? And the other thing I like about when you ask somebody about their story is, what were those pivot points? And we all have many, and yet there were a couple of three that really made a big difference, right? And what you're asking me is a big pivot point. So a little bit about my background. I'm the youngest of five boys. I was born in Edmonton, grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia. I am the proud son of John Dalton Elton and Irene Tanner Elton. The reason I tell you that is I grew up in a ridiculously happy household. I mean, my parents were beyond wonderful. They were talented, they were funny, they were compassionate, they were serving everywhere you can imagine. And so I grew up in this happy household. Well, I thought everybody grew up like I did, right? So, like when you grow up, you go, everybody. And then it turns out that actually most people didn't grow up like that.
Mm-hmm.
My brothers and I are all best friends, and our wives are all best friends. Like, how weird is that? Right. And so when I went to work and I started to work with people and there was this like dysfunction, I'd kind of go, well, that's not right. That doesn't make me want to come to work. That doesn't make me want to do good work. And where the pivot point for me is I was working for a company out of Salt Lake City. We were a recognition company. And I'm selling recognition programs. It's like the greatest job for me ever, right? I grew up selling broadcast time, which was kind of fun, but hard to connect the dots as to how, I got an extra high rate for a Super Bowl commercial in Columbus, Ohio, how that made the world a better place, right? And so I got to go into companies and say, hey, you should value and recognize your employees. And we were doing all this stuff. And I had a really great, my territory was northern New Jersey, so it was pharmaceutical companies. New Jersey and Basel, Switzerland are like where you find every pharmaceutical company ever. And it was really great. We worked with a consultant, how to make a better culture, and recognition was a part of that. So I call our CEO, Kent Murdoch. I just spent some time with him last week, actually, out in Utah. And I said, hey, Kent, I asked these guys about how they got really good. And they said, well, we became the thought leaders. I go, well, how did you do that? I said, well, our one of our senior executives wrote this really great book called The Talent Equation. That's genius. So I called up Kent and I said, hey, Kent, nobody has written a definitive book on employee recognition. We've been doing this a long time. If we were to write that book and be the thought leaders, my job would be so much easier. People would call me. I'd never have to cold call because if they wanted good recognition and a good culture, they'd know who to call. And he goes, that's brilliant. We'll write the book. And I went, I don't think that's what I said. When I said we should write the book, I was like, you should write the book, and then I would benefit from said book, right? And to your point, Amy, that was the pivot point where he said to me, he said, you know what, Chester, you're a smart guy. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, first off, I was delighted that he thought I was a smart guy. That was when your CEO says you're a smart guy, that's good, right? So I played with ideas for about a year. And here was the genius of Kent. He calls me back and he says, hey, I have been thinking about that book idea. And I've hired a writer. His name is Adrian Gostick. Introduce yourself to him and write the book. Wow. And I went, he facilitated because Listen, when I go to my high school reunions and I say, yeah, my co-author and I, we've written 17 books, 5 New York Times bestsellers, and on and on, and they go, wait a minute, I was in your English class. that there's something. And I said, well, my partner's the writer. And they go, oh, well, that makes sense. You were always a good delegator, and I go, great. So that was that pivot point where we really took deep dives into all the clients we had and customers and said, these are the guys that do it really well. How do they do it? How can we create workplaces where when the alarm clock goes off, people throw their fist in the air and say, yes, I get to go to work today, as opposed to hit the snooze button and say, can I sneak in an extra 10 minutes before I have to go to my job, also known as a living hell,
Mhm. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. I just want to underline at the end how just the beauty of leadership bringing in, like looking at a situation and saying, this is what we want to accomplish. And Kent was in tune enough to say, what's a potential barrier? Is Chester a professional writer? What can we do to actually make his vision happen? Because it's a brilliant one. Let's get a professional writer. And I think good leaders, the best leaders, they're not just looking for the outcome, Chester, but they're looking for what's going to prevent us from actually accomplishing this. So I love that you included that as well, because that's big, and I think that's where we sometimes go 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 wrong or off the path.
Yeah, exactly. And Kent and I, he's long retired. We're dear friends to this day. And I'll tell you what was really interesting is the trust level. Because he called us in, he said, look, I don't care if they know you're from our company. I just want you to go make noise. Like, what a great mission. What's your job? Make noise. We're going to just be noisy around, recognition and culture and gratitude. And we had so much fun along the way. And Kent let us do it. And he called me aside every now and again. He says, do you know why I let you and Adrian just do what you do? Because of your character. He says, I'm banking. I know you'll never embarrass the company intentionally. Everybody makes mistakes and we made lots of them, but he says that you'll go out and you'll just do good. And by doing that good and making that noise, that ripple effect will come back and it'll be the tide that lifts all the boats. And we had so much fun. But to answer the unasked question, Amy, which is what's with the orange?
How did you know? I was just thinking that. I was like, do we want to ask a question about the orange? So also
Everybody.
a mind reader. Let's add that.
I mean, my phone, it's orange, right? This is my favorite mechanical pencil. This is my favorite hidden nib fountain pen. Ooh. I'm a bit of a fountain pen snob, by the way. Yeah, and of course, if people say, how do you coordinate all that? I said, you know what? It all comes down to the socks. By the way, it's getting harder and harder for me to do that on a podcast. Anyway, we got together with these marketing guys in New York, and they said, look, what you want to do, what you're doing, you don't want to create a brand. You want to create a movement. There's a difference, right? Great brand, but then a movement. And these were the guys that started the breast cancer awareness movement. So perfect guys to talk to. And here are the elements for your your compassionators. Is that what you call them? Yeah. There were 4 elements. The first element is a noble cause. So you think of breast cancer, you think of creating great places to work. Who doesn't want a great place to work? Like if you're against that, then there's a whole series of counseling and so on, and probably some medication that you need to consider. Right? Secondly, it was really interesting because we spent some time with them. And they said, you need a likable spokesperson. And they said, we've talked to you guys will be okay. There's nothing creepy about you guys, right? But then they said, you need a symbol. Now, Mark, if I were to ask you, what's the symbol for breast cancer awareness, you would immediately say,
what's the ribbon, the pink ribbon?
Pink ribbon. So not only the ribbon, the color. It's a pink ribbon. There's blue ribbons and green ribbons, and nobody really knows what those ones are, but everybody knows the pink ribbon. And when you get NFL football players, the toughest athletes on the planet, wearing pink cleats, you've arrived, right? So the symbol and the color. And then they said, it's not a must have because breast cancer awareness doesn't have this. It's not a must have, but it's a nice to have is if you have a mascot. You think of like great brands like Ronald McDonald and so on. So when we first started to write our books, our first title, we really struggled with it. What are we going to call it? And I've got a brilliant neighbor, Mr. Blonder, my kids called him Greg Blonder. And he's genius. Like he's off the chart smart. So Greg, we're struggling. What do we call the book? And recognition that works or recognition that matters, or we forget recognition was like the key word. He goes, I'm on it. And my boys, who are also genius, right? Comes back and he says, we've got your title. Managing with Carrots. I went, ooh, like that. More carrots, less sticks, the old Aesop's fable. And so carrots are generally orange. The Dutch made sure of that. So orange, carrots, mission thing, and wait for it, the mascot. This is Garrett the Carrot. He's gone through a couple of iterations, but I like this one, kind of the reggae kind of look. And here's what we do, Amy. We talk about people do something great. The all-in book that Mark, you showed, it was how the best leaders create a culture of belief that delivers big results. So we say a great culture is where people believe what they do matters and they make a difference. And when they make a difference, it's noticed and it's celebrated in small ways, in big ways. So when we present, I always bring, and it's so funny because if I've presented there before, they go, now you're bringing the carrots, right? I go, well, yeah. It's like American Express. You don't leave home without them, right? So we bring these carrots, and Amy, it's so funny to watch these like super accomplished, highly compensated executives that I'll say, if you participate, you'll get rewarded with a carrot. We'll play like name that tune. They will launch themselves out of their seats with their answer. It's Happy by Pharrell. I go, yes. I go, you make enough money to buy the town that has the factory that makes these carrots, but to win the carrot. And so, for your listeners and whatnot, don't just, create a brand. Don't just like have a management style. Create a movement within. Well, like, how do you want to be remembered as a leader?
Yeah.
And then we always say, and by the way, take it home. I love Stephen Covey when he says, well, what do you want on your tombstone? Like I'm pretty sure, Amy, you wouldn't want to say, she had a great podcast. That Amy, man. Great podcast. Like on your tombstone. Man, that guy could close a deal. He could sell. That guy could sell. You go, no. You want good father, good husband, good grandfather, I've already told my wife that I want my tombstone to be orange, subtle. And how do you want to be remembered? Well, the principles that work in work, and we've documented it through countless studies and so on. Kind, grateful, not soft, kind and grateful people that know their people, manage to their strengths, are grateful and compassionate, get extraordinary results. And if you take that home, you might be lucky enough to be married to the amazing Heidi Olson Elton for 42 years. It worked out pretty well.
That is awesome. And I love that idea of creating a brand within your team.
Yeah.
What do you want your team to be? And thank you for saying kind and grateful, but that's not soft. And so talk a little bit more about that. Talk a little bit more about the power within teams and organizations of especially gratitude, especially expressing gratitude to people. What's the difference? If people say, well, they get gratitude, they get a paycheck, and I say thank you in passing, and I tell you, say great job when we've done a good job on the team, but give us the difference. What's the difference really between showing gratitude and some of those kind of passing things that leaders tend to do, and why does that make such a difference in a team and an organization?
Yeah, I mean, a wonderful insight, Mark, because, you know, leaders go through that HR training, you need to be more grateful, and they show up, they go, hey, Mark, great job. That's just annoying, right? And general praise has no impact. Again, this comes back to knowing your people, know their stories. Mark may want public praise, the spotlight. Amy wants more like the one-on-one. Know the difference, because if you get it mixed up, the message gets blurred and gets messy. And instead of having that good moment, you've embarrassed somebody because they don't want to be on the stage, right? So this idea of nice to have versus must have, soft skill, hard skill. So it's really interesting. I just want to take a second and say, if you are a leader and you lead any team of any size, never forget that first and foremost, what you are as a leader is you are a coach, you are a mentor, you are a teacher. You got training, right? Training, that's what managers do, and it's really important. Development, that's what leaders do. Leaders are in charge of developing their people. And you've got to engage them. So one of my favorite exercises is say, look, write down the names of 3 or 4 people that had the biggest impact in your life. Now, and if you can, over and above your family, because like for me, it's my dad, it's my mom, it's my brothers. I mean, that's easy. Over and above that, though, I guarantee you, in every case, there was a teacher, there was a coach, there was a mentor. For me, Ken Murdoch, no question, right? My basketball coach as a kid, my rugby coach as a kid, right? And the thing is, they celebrated you and they encouraged you. Were they soft on you? Not a chance. In fact, we get to this idea of kindness. Is it kind to let somebody perform at a mediocre level when you know they're better than that? No. In fact, it's unkind. Is it kind to let somebody turn in shoddy work and say, good enough?
Yeah.
No, it's not. So it's so interesting. I love this idea of, it's a soft skill. It's a soft skill. I go, really? Tell me the best part about being a leader. The people. Tell me the worst part about being a leader. It's the people. You're right. So you kind of go, look, you're going to engage your people. The best leaders, the people that you respected the most, they were hard on you and you loved them for it, because when you succeeded, they celebrated with you too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I love that point about soft skills. I always say it's the soft skills that sometimes give us the hardest results.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes the difference. So tell us a little bit more about what you learned in that book, Anxiety at Work. I want to just take a little bit of time on that, because that seems to be a little different than leading with gratitude. It's like, well, where did the anxiety part of that come in? Why did you go that route? And what were some of the key takeaways? Especially, I'm thinking for people who are experiencing anxiety at work, or leaders who have people who are experiencing anxiety at work. What are some of the main points that you can pull out to help those people?
Yeah, I love when people ask this question, because it does seem a little off track for us, right? Before we leave the soft skills and the hard skills, we're on sort of a mission to rebrand the soft skills as not soft skills but power skills.
Yeah, good.
And it's a great way to do words matter? With a rose by any other name smell as sweet. You go, well, yeah, Shakespeare does that one, right? So anxiety, the story is actually quite hilarious. So Adrian and I, we've been writing together for 25 years. That's, most companies or marriages don't last that long, right? Well, Anthony is Adrian's son, and brilliant kid. I've known him since he was like 6 years old. Always very anxious, though. So anyway, we launch Leading with Gratitude. We launch it in every bookstore, in every airport bookstore in America. It's going great for 2 weeks. And then this pandemic thing happened. If you're going to write a book and launch it, see if you can avoid a global pandemic, because especially if all your books are in airports, right? Anyway, so we've got time on our hands, and our publisher, McGraw-Hill Business, said, "What are you guys thinking about?" Well, Anthony had gone to Adrian and said, "Hey, you guys talk about culture all the time. Do you ever talk about mental health?" And we looked at him and went, "No. Like, why would you do that?" So I'm the tail end of the baby boomers. Adrian is a Gen Xer and English. Enough said. If you're English, the last thing you have on your list is, let's explore our feelings today, right? It's just stiff upper lip, stay calm, and carry on, right? And my background, my grandfather was English too. It's very much a part of our culture. We said, "Well, don't you ever talk about mental health?" And we go, "No." And he says, "Well, I got news for you. My generation does." So our book, Anxiety at Work, it was always Gostick and Elton. This one is Gostick and Elton and Gostick. Anthony is our third author on that. He said, "My generation, when we say, how are you doing? What we mean, how are you managing your mental health?" He said, think about it. How can you have a great culture with all these young people coming in if you don't address mental health? Mm-hmm. It's so funny. Like my generation's, hey, I'm sad. Well, cheer up. I'll tell you what, turn that frown upside down. And it's so funny where we'd say, look, I can tell you're anxious, just calm down. We came up with this, one of my favorite quotes of all time. You love this, Amy. You're going to want to write this down. Never in the history of calming down has telling somebody to calm down ever calmed down anybody. Right?
No.
So we did. So with the admonition from Anthony, or Tony, as I know, we said, well, let's take a deep dive. Well, the numbers were fascinating, and it was very much generational. There was no question about it. Pre-pandemic, about 18% of employees said I had some kind of anxiety disorder. Now, disorder, like being anxious, sometimes is a good thing, right? Gets you psyched up for the presentation or the game or whatever. A disorder is, I'm so anxious, I shut down. Mm-hmm. So 18%, say 1 in 5. During the pandemic, it went up to 30%. That's a big number. That's like a third of your people at some point are curled up in the fetal position saying, hey, I'm not going to work today. Then we broke it down generationally. And that went up to 42% for the younger generations, workers in their 20s. And then this was the staggering number. 75% of Gen X or millennials, or not Gen X, millennials or Gen Z, said they had left a job due to a mental anxiety thing. 75%. Mm-hmm. And why? Because it wasn't safe to talk about it. The stigma was so heavy. In other words, I break my leg, we know what to do about that. Go get some PT, come back when you're ready. I'm really anxious, I need time off. To go, whoa, Mark, I kind of told you this was a high pressure job. What do you mean? You're telling me you're not up to it? They're afraid. There's a stigma. If I talk about it, I won't get the raise. I won't get the promotion. Better for me to just quit, take some time off, go get another job. Mm-hmm. So we came up with 8 strategies. Now, long story short, and I know we're over time already, so I'll make this really quick, is that the 8th strategy was a gratitude practice. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a lot in there. One was, as leaders, you need to create a safe environment. Again, know your people's story. And don't think about it as physical health and mental health. It's just health. Whether you break your leg or you've got anxiety, it's same. Listening is really important. As leaders, we always want to jump in with a solution. Say, you know what? Sometimes people don't need a manager. Sometimes they don't need a leader. They just need somebody to listen. And the numbers were amazing that employees that had a leader that would just listen to them were, and I'm throwing a bunch of numbers at you, but like 62% less likely to burn out. Yeah. Now, one of my favorite ones is that when we teach this, I'll ask, how many of you have a rock star in your team? Everybody's got a rock star. I say, great. When it gets really tight and really tough, tight deadline, all this, what do you do with those rock stars? Load them up. Because they never say no. I said, I guarantee you, your top performers are by far your most anxious. They won't eat, they won't sleep, they'll never let you down. And they're really good at hiding it, right? Because they always say yes. So we say, look for changes in behavior. Somebody who's never late starts showing up late. Somebody who never loses their temper loses their temper. Not everybody has a bad day. You're looking at the trends. So here's the trick, though. I can't just go up and say, hey, Amy, I read this book, Anxiety at Work. Man, you check all the boxes. Because what happens, they go, oh, no, that's not me. That's not me. Right? So we talk to these counselors, and this is a great little tool in your toolbox as a leader. You go up and say, hey, Amy, I noticed that you've been a little more withdrawn. You always participate. You've always got great ideas. I've just noticed, is there something I can help you with? And I said, why that? And the counselor said, because when you say, I noticed, your brain translates that to, I care. And if I know my leader cares, I'm more likely, cautiously at first, to open up and say, my mom just got a diagnosis with terminal cancer and I'm a mess.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, let's work around that. Do you need some time off? Can we fill in for you? Rather than say, if I start saying I'm really anxious and I'm really sad, they're just going to find somebody else. Now, the 8th strategy is a gratitude practice. And I'm a huge fan of tokens and rituals. Token, right? The carrot. How can you not cheer up when you look at that, right? So the idea is a gratitude journal. And maybe you've done these. Really interesting. So it was so funny. We'd written 15 books, right? And I go to Adrian and I go, look, I've been keeping a gratitude journal for like years now. Like, how stupid is it that we don't have a gratitude journal? We're the apostles of appreciation, the gurus of gratitude, the Dalai Lamas of workplace traumas. We got to have like a gratitude journal. So we did. We published one called The Gratitude Habit. 90 Days to a More Grateful Life. And you've seen them, really simple. Fill in the blank. I should have one here, but we've got a second edition that I want to show you. So anyway, and we just self-published it. We printed like 5,000 copies. We sold them all. It was great. We get a call from the One Kind Act a Day group out of Salt Lake City. It's every 501(c)'s dream. This billionaire says, I'm going to fund it in perpetuity. They never have to ask for a donation. In fact, if you offer to send them money, they say, give it to a charity and count it as your one kind act a day. Like, how beautiful is that? Well, here's what happened. And I love telling this story. So they start with families and, they go to middle schools and universities and then businesses and all kinds of places. They get a call from the Utah State Prison and says, will you teach kindness to our inmates? They said, not really on our vision board. We hadn't really thought about that. They developed this little 6-hour, 1 hour a week for 6 weeks course. The second week, they give them a gratitude journal. Get in this ritual. Every morning, every night, 5 minutes, write it down, fill in the blank, and everything. Well, even though it was self-published, it was kind of expensive, right? It was like $14, $15, right? When one of the officers at the prison says, we have a printing press. Could we print them? And you could do it for half the price, right? And because they did that, and because we owned it, we didn't sell it, right? It was self-published. We could do whatever we wanted. So we created, I know you're going to say, what does it look like? Well, it looks like this. It's called the One Kind Act Day Gratitude Journal. And it's printed in the prison. Now, one of the things I like about it is, like the spiral bound like a manual, but it lays flat. Fill in the blank, right? And you can take the little gratitude challenge. It's got the little, and they send you a little update every day, like be kind, here's some ideas. And then here's the story that I love. They sent me this thank you card from one of the inmates. And the card said, thank you so much for my gratitude journal. I do it every morning and every night. And twice a day, I escape prison. I know. And you kind of go, how can you not get behind that? Then, again, another ritual. Do you know the challenge coins in the military?
Yeah.
Mark, talk about a challenge coin. What's a challenge coin?
Yeah, a challenge you carry it with you to remind you to do certain things, and then in some cases you pass it on to somebody else when you've kind of accomplished your challenge to challenge somebody else to do it too.
Yeah. So in the military, if you do a really great job, your leader, and it's usually got their insignia on and stuff, gives you this challenge coin. It's a sign of excellence. And then it's really kind of fun. And then when you're out at the bar, if you put it on the bar, your commander has to buy you your beer. It's kind of weird. Anyway, so they created the one kind act a day challenge coin. So you see somebody doing something kind, you give them the coin, and then you record that kindness on the back, and then you pass it on. Well, in the prison, you can't give out metal. So here's what they did. They said, well, we'll give you pass-along cards. So these little cards are about this big. You see somebody doing something kind, you write down what it was, and you give it to them. Well, if that inmate gets 10 cards, they can turn them in, and here's what the prison does. They write a letter to your family. They list the 10 things you did, and they send your family the coin. I know. Like, seriously, Amy, if you don't get, a little teary-eyed on this, you check with your doctor, right? Here's the story, and I love this one. The officer, they don't like to be called guards. The officer comes back and says, and we'll just use a random name, Janet, you've got a phone call. She goes, very funny, I never get phone calls. Who is it? Said, it's your mom. They said, yeah, that's really funny. I haven't talked to my mom in 10 years. She's written me off. She goes, Janet, take the call. She goes, she picks up the phone. She goes, is this really you, Mom? She goes, yeah. She said, why are you calling me? She said, I got the letter and I got the coin. And even though we'd written you off because you'd been in and out of jail so many times we lost track, I said to myself, she's trying. I should give her a call. That's the power of gratitude. That's the power of kindness. And when you have these rituals where you say, I'm going to set a goal for a random act of kindness today for somebody I don't know. And I'm just going to make their day a little better. That ripple effect. Here's the last one. And this is one of my favorites. I literally carry around 10 like little gratitude stones like every day. And it's so interesting. So I'm on this long flight, right? It was from Salt Lake to Orlando, long flight. Luckily, I get upgraded. And this is when you kind of have time to talk to the flight attendants and stuff. Well, it's on United. I've got 2.6 million miles on United. Which just means that you're an idiot, right? So anyway, so I go, and they're delightful, and they're really taking great care of us. And I go back and I'm talking with them. I said, hey, have you guys ever heard of the story of the good luck gratitude stone? Well, no one's heard of it because I made it up, right? And I said, yeah, these stones are all different and flawed because people are different and flawed. But the stone represents the ripple effect of kindness and gratitude, like your great service and your great smile. And you keep these stones with you to remind you there's always something to be grateful for. And over time, it brings you good luck. But the tradition is it has to be gifted to you. And they're like, oh, that's really cool. And then I pull out 2 gratitude stones. And I give it to them. Well, Amy, you would think I had given them a Fabergé egg. And there's one flight attendant, she's so cute. She goes, I'm kind of a softie. I think I'm going to cry. and you know what they always say? They go, I'm going to keep this with me, like, always.
Yeah.
And, like, I tell these stories to my friends, and they go, let me get this straight. She cried after you gave her a rock? And they go, exactly.
Yeah.
So, back to anxiety, you get these little, and all the studies show that when you give somebody, by the way, when I gave them the stone, do you think it made me feel good?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they feel great. You feel great. And by the way, the service skyrocketed.
Probably for the whole plane.
Yeah. And who else got 2 pieces of pie? And so all those little things make such a difference. That's why it's a power skill. And how do you get good at it? Get in your reps. Like, get in your, how many carrots did you give away? How many stones? How many coins? and you get in that, and it gets to the point where it's not what you do, because people say, well, that's just not me. I go, it's not anybody. You got to practice. When was the last time, did you ever try golf? Were you good at that right away? You know, and say, you get in your reps. The more you do it, the better you get. And then there's that tipping point. It's not stuff you do, it's who you are as a team, as a leader, as a company. And then when you take it home, that's a good life.
Yeah. Oh, we could go on forever. So, Amy, I'm going to let you ask the last question, but I'm going to ask the second to last question. And the second to last question is this: how can people get more of Chester Elton? And I want you to throw in a little pitch around, because I heard about this from Christy, the AI Chester.
Oh,
So I want you to talk a little bit about that too, about how people can get a
quick.
little bit more of Chester Elton in their lives to help them, and actually to help exactly with what you're talking about. How can you help me get more reps around these power skills?
Yeah, thank you for that, by the way. I mean, chesterelton.com, thecultureworks.com, two websites. I'll tell you what, though, every other week we publish the Gratitude Journal on LinkedIn. And just great stories. We bring in other authors. It's very uplifting. It's free. We have 330,000 subscribers to our little newsletter, which tickles me. So follow us on LinkedIn. Sign up for the journal. I would encourage you to go to One Kind Act a Day. They'll give you a little prompt every day. I love those things. It's always a great reminder. And to your point, we've developed. Everybody's into AI, and we're no different. So Adrian and I do a lot of executive coaching. Some friends approached me, and we created an AI Chester. So you can get Chester 24/7, 365 days a week. I don't know if this is going to show up, but here's my AI generated Chester with the
That's
carrot.
awesome.
And this little QR code will get you like 60 days free. You can play with it. You get 3 coaches. You get an executive coach, you get a gratitude coach, and you get an anxiety coach. It's really great.
Amazing.
Thanks for asking. This is my latest fun thing.
That's cool.
Kind of looks like me.
All right, Amy, you get the burden and the joy of asking Chester our last question.
Yeah, I just, before I do that, I just want to take a minute and just sincerely thank you, because I think that there are so many people out there that want to do good work, that want to be better leaders. And sometimes we can overthink things. And you've just made it very human and very simple. And I think anybody listening to this can walk away with at least three actionable items that they can do right now. And so I really want to thank you, because the ripple effect is real. And when we think about the pebble dropping in the stone, what ripple do we want to create, really? And so thank you for making your ripple so incredibly beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
Well, that was very kind, Amy. Thank you.
Mhm. So, your question is, what's one tip that you would give our compassionators to infuse compassion into their life this week?
This week, okay. I don't know when this is going to air, but today's Friday, so you've only got 2 days to get this done. But yeah, look, to me, it's all about be kind. Like, I know this is an old frame, but how would you like to be treated?
Mm.
Just think about that for a minute. And if your default is kindness, my mentor, and by the way, if you want to get some great ideas, follow Marshall Goldsmith. What got you here won't get you there. He has been so kind to mentor me over the years. And he taught me this one thing that's made all the difference. And I teach it to everybody I know. It's Buddha's 3 doors. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but the great Buddha said, every word that passes through your mouth should go through 3 doors. The first door is it true? Makes sense, right? The second door is it necessary? And the third door is it kind?
Mm.
And again, kindness isn't softness, right? There's a lot of things that are true and not necessary and not kind. If you can check those 3 boxes, go for it. Now, I adore my dad. He passed away a long time ago, but he's very quotable. And, and asking my dad about a situation like this. So what happens when you're in a situation where, the truth is kind of unkind? What do? He says, perfect example. Young couple on the street, new baby, comes over to show us their first new baby. And most babies are really pretty cute. He goes, not this one. This baby was one ugly baby. And I go, what did you do? He said, well, is it true that it's an ugly baby? Well, yeah, in my opinion, right? Is it necessary to tell him? Absolutely not. Would it be kind? No. I said, well, what did you do? My dad, he goes, I said, hey, you got yourself a baby there. That's a baby. Good job. So as a leader, that power of the pause is really important. Mm. We want to be reactive. We want to solve the problem. Take a beat, think about the 3 doors, and then proceed. And if your default is, I'm going to coach you up, I'm going to mentor you up, I'm going to teach you, it takes a lot of the emotion and a lot of the anger that you might have and say, my job is to teach. Here's how I'm going to teach. I'm going to teach with truth and when it's necessary, and I'm going to default to kind. And I will tell you, people will walk on hot coals for you because you've got a relationship, because they know you care. And when somebody cares, the whole game changes.
Yeah, that's so true.
And of course, we asked for 1 tip, and I think we got 2. Because Chester always over delivers. And so I just want to add to what Amy said. Thanks, Chester, for being with us and for sharing the wisdom of your years and your research and your experience with our Compassionators. And I wish our Compassionators a great week. Come back next week where Amy and I are going to chat a little bit more about what we learned from Chester. And everybody, have a great week where you enjoy the power of kindness in your lives.
Thanks for the invitation. This was wonderful. You can call me back. Like, I would do this again.
We might. Be careful what you wish for.
That's right. That's right. You're absolutely coming back.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Infuse Compassion podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share a review and like the podcast so other Compassionators can join us. Until next time, let's all do something each day to infuse compassion into the world. For more information on our guests, see the show notes. For more information on Mark and Amy, go to infusecompassion.com.